Alright, tubes, got something pretty interesting here for you today. We got the old $25 lawnmower out here, and I'm going to get this thing prepped up for winter. I'm getting ready to put it in storage, and I'm figuring it's November 18th today that I'm filming this, and I doubt I'm going to have to mow the grass anymore. We actually mowed it yesterday, not with that thing, but we did mow the grass yesterday, but I really don't think that it's going to need it again. So I figured I'd walk you through the steps that I take when I winterize my equipment, and show you how it's done. So stand by here. Alrighty now, so the very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my air hose here hooked up to the air compressor and try and blow off as much of the grass as I can. And to be honest, this isn't just a winter storage tip. You should do this regularly on your mower. And the reason being is that if you leave all that grass build up, what will happen is it's going to hold moisture. If it holds moisture, it's going to cause your deck to rust out. I can't tell you how many mowers I've seen have the decks all rusted out on them, and not always, but a good portion of the time, if you ask the owner, he'll say, "Oh yeah, I never clean the grass off of that thing." So that's why. And as you can see, you want to try and get to as much of it as you can. If you got safety shields in place or anything like that that could hide trapped grass, make sure you take them off to get everything. Don't forget about the underside of your mower deck either. It's the same case. Grass gets packed in especially tightly from the spinning blades, and if you don't take care of it quickly, it'll definitely rust your deck out in no time. Same case here. Don't wait till the end of the season to do this. We usually do it once every 1 to 2 months. Next thing I'm going to do with this thing while I got it up on the ramps here is I'm going to change the oil on it. It's a good idea to change your oil at the end of the season before you store your equipment, and the reason being is that old oil can hold moisture in it. Sometimes it'll have various types of acids in it, and it probably doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that neither of those two things are good to have in your oil while it's sitting. It's just going to lead to corrosion of internal engine parts over time, and that's never a good thing. So we always change our oil at the end of the season, and as you can see here, it looks like I was pretty due for an oil change anyway. Alrighty now. Decided to move into the garage here. It was getting a little bit cold outside, and I figured I got the room in here, so I might as well take advantage of it. But anyway, you can see here we're filling her up with some fresh oil, and I just got it sitting right now. I always like letting my oil containers drain longer than most people would, and you'd be surprised. We used to have like a 5-quart catch container on the workbench set up with a funnel like this, and whenever we did oil, we'd leave each one to drain for maybe a day or two, and you'd be surprised. After about a year or so, you'd have a couple quarts in there. That's just a little tip for you guys there. But anyway, I'm going to move on here to what you could probably call the most important step of the winterization process, at least if you want your equipment to start up and run good in the spring. Don't get me wrong, every step we've talked about here is important. If you want your piece of equipment to last a long time, you don't want to skip any of those steps. But like I say, this one here I feel is the most important, because if you skip this one, there's a good chance your mower's not going to start come springtime, and it's probably going to take more than fresh gas to fix it. AKA, you're going to have to open up your wallet, and nobody wants to do that if you can take steps beforehand to prevent it. Basically, what you can boil it down to is that gasoline has a limited shelf life. And not only does it go stale, it can actually cause damage if it sits long enough. So I'm sure people can remember back in the day, before ethanol was added to fuels, you would have gasoline start to gum up and varnish and basically transform into a totally different compound if it sat for a long time. And of course, once that gasoline turned to gum and varnish, it would just clog up anything in its path. Fuel shutoff valves, fuel lines, everything inside of your carburetor, the jets, everything, it would just get clogged up by this gum and varnish. Nowadays, with the fuel that contains ethanol, you don't really get the gum and varnish problem quite as much, but what happens instead is that the alcohol just eats away at everything. It'll eat away at your fuel lines, any kind of O-rings or anything rubber. It'll cause it to swell up. And believe it or not, it can even corrode the inside of your fuel tank and your carburetor. Now, what we used to do to try and mitigate this issue was just to drain the fuel out of all of our equipment at the end of the summer. Lawnmowers, motorcycles, snowblowers, in that case at the end of winter, you get the idea. We just drain the tanks empty and call it good. Thing we found though was when we went to start them up, they wouldn't run good if they'd run at all. Basically what we realized is that you think you're draining out the fuel, but you're not. Unless you physically take the carburetor off the whatever piece of equipment is and totally clean it out and blow it out and make sure there's no residue left in there, you're always going to have a little bit of fuel left somewhere, and it's just going to be causing problems for you. Fortunately, there's a cheap and easy way to prevent all these problems. and that is simply by using Sta-Bil fuel stabilizer. The stuff is super easy to use. If you know how to mix up two-stroke gasoline, and if you've been watching and following along with this video, assuming you can do everything else we did up to this point, you have no problem with this at all. They sell it in a bunch of different sizes. They sent me a 4 ounce, a 10 ounce, and a 16 ouncer. Personally, I like the 16 ouncer best because it's got the built-in mixer, which keeps things simple, clean, you don't make a mess. First thing we do is we top off our fuel tank with fresh gas. Obviously, you don't want to put old gas in here. If you're putting old gas in it, what the hell is the point? And make sure you fill the tank up all the way. You don't want to leave a big air gap because what that can lead to is condensation. And condensation can lead to corrosion and rust. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Once your tank's full, then all you have to do is add Sta-Bil. Every ounce of Sta-Bil will treat 2.5 gallons of fuel. This tank's roughly 5 gallons, maybe a little bit under, but I'm just going to go ahead and put 2 ounces worth in. Then all you got to do is run the engine for give or take about 5 minutes or so, which will probably be me driving it from here to the shed. And what that'll do is it'll make sure that the entire fuel system is treated. You want to make sure the Sta-Bil gets everywhere. If it's only in your fuel tank, it's not really going to help the carburetor very much. And that, my friends, is it. That's all you got to do to stabilize your fuel. I think it was the most important thing we did in this video, but I think it took the least amount of time. And what's nice about that stuff is it's good for 24 months too, so who knows what happens. If I decide to use a different mower next summer, I don't even have to worry about it. This thing's good for another 2 years. Obviously, we didn't have to drain the fuel. That's a big plus. Other than the fact that it wouldn't have worked anyway, you gotta deal with hoses and figure out how to get rid of the old gas and this and that and the other thing. Just a few things I thought I would mention here. Obviously, I was dealing with my lawnmower, but this stuff is good for 2 strokes, 4 strokes, antique cars. It doesn't have any alcohol in it. So you can put this in anything that burns gasoline. Any kind of ethanol blends too. Whatever you put this in, as long as it's gasoline, it's good. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching. Check down in the description there for a link to get some Sta-Bil for yourself. It's good stuff and I highly recommend it. Of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, stop by, hang out for a while, check out some other videos. I thank you guys for watching. As always, hope this video was helpful and we'll see you in the next one. Alright tubes.